writer friends. Today we're going to be talking with Lisa Daly. I'm super excited. She's a romance author and she just came out with a book on how to get famous writing romance. So I'm super excited about this interview. Let's hop into it. Okay, so if you could just start out by telling us a little bit about yourself and your books, your publishing journey, and whether you're indie author or traditional. And that's a lot of questions, but just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey.
That is a lot of questions. Thank you
Right?
very much for having me first, Devin. I really appreciate it. So I'm hybrid published, I guess now. My first books were traditionally published. I've been published through Penguin, St. Martin's, Source Books, Random House. Before that belonged to Penguin, and then Penguin again.
Yeah.
So so I've done that. Although I did do the book that I just had coming out, come out last week, how to become a famous romance author. That book I actually indie published because the audience for it is so niche.
Oh, yeah.
I really wanted to write it, but I also did not want to go through all of the craziness with traditional publishing, because the thing about traditional publishing is you're really only as good as your last book sales. And with a niche title, especially if you indie publish, you can make a pretty decent amount of money on the book for a specific audience, but this is not a book that's going to be in every Barnes and Noble. So it didn't, and that kind of thing can really hurt you the next time you're trying to be traditionally published. Okay. So I don't know how many questions.
Oh yeah, no, that's just perfect. Awesome, cool. And how many romance books do you have out? And I know you do self-help too.
Yeah, so my first book was self-help dating advice book called Stop Getting Dumped. And that book became like this big bestseller here and in the UK, and it sold in a bunch of foreign countries, which was kind of cool, but also weird. And my second book was romance, kind of a romantic comedy called 15 Minutes of Shame, about a TV dating expert who finds out on national television that her husband is cheating on her. And I actually got the idea for it. So my first book, Stop Getting Dumped, came out in May, and not this past May, but in a May many years ago. And at the time there was a big big publishing show called Book Expo. And here I am, this brand new author, and like my whole career is ahead of me, and I'm so excited, and I'm with my agent, my friends. And my agent sees this other agent from across the room, and they go over to talk, and my agent says, "How's it been going?" And the other agent says, "Oh, it's been awful since the divorce." And what she was talking about was there was another very popular dating book at the time called The Rules. Okay. And the Rules ladies had sort of trotted their husband farm animals on all these talk shows, and one of the husbands did not like that and left in a very messy and public divorce. And so I had this idea, novel idea. I had this idea about like what happens when you tie your personal life to your career and your personal life implodes. And I thought that was such a fascinating and humiliating topic.
Oh yeah.
So I wrote this novel, and it was pretty exciting, and I decided that I really, really liked writing romance novels. But I did go kind of back and forth. I wrote some dating advice and some novels as well.
Okay, wonderful. Well, it's lovely to know a little bit more about you and everything. I heard one of my friends actually shared your book on Instagram. Barrett, he shared it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is right up my alley. I need to look into this because I'm currently working on rom-com books series, and I'm just loving it and everything. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I need to reach out to her. And I'm reading the book right now and I'm enjoying it, but I haven't finished it yet.
Oh, I'm so glad. Well,
yeah.
You know how to find me if you have any questions.
Oh, so perfect. I probably will. Perfect. Well, okay. So the second question, what are your top 5 favorite books of all time? I know it's a hard question.
I know it's
whipping
really
them all out, right?
Right. Okay. So I think Pride and Prejudice is, I think, the answer for every romance writer, or probably every other romance writer, and especially every rom-com writer, because Jane Austen really was quite the wit. So even though it was not like, this laugh out loud constant thing, there are some very funny moments, and she was so witty. So I would say that's one of my favorite books. God, I'm the worst. I love books. I'm constantly reading.
Yep.
There's another book that I love called Why Beautiful People Have More Daughters, which is it's written by these two evolutionary biologists, and
Okay.
they explain all these different things that happen in the world, based on evolutionary biology. This sounds like
Okay.
such a
Wow.
crazy
Yeah,
topic.
no, it's good. I think it's really good to read in all around, that's scientists, like statistics and stuff. Like it's good to read that
Mhm.
kind of stuff. You get good story ideas.
Yeah, that's the truth. You never know where a good story will come from.
Right.
I love craft books. I'm like completely addicted to craft books, as you can see.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see. I have like,
Oh
I
yeah.
have a big shelf back there,
Oh, nice.
but my significant other is also a writer. So we have, like, between the two of us,
Yep.
a gazillion craft books. And
That's
so
perfect.
fast.
I love
I know,
craft
right?
books too.
Fascinating. So probably On Writing is one of my favorites.
Okay.
Although when I first published my first novel, I had met with my editor, and we were supposed to be talking about my next dating advice book. And I told her kind of over dessert, like, I have this idea for a novel. And I told her the premise. And it was one of those things like, when you have a really good date and you're like talking over the table and you're finishing each other's
Yeah.
sentences. It was like that, except for books.
Oh, that's funny. That's
And
awesome.
it was kind of awesome. And so she said, forget the next dating book, like write the novel. And so
Oh,
I said, okay, what do you need from me to publish this book? And she's like, oh, I don't know, write half of it and a synopsis. So I bought a plane ticket. I'm like, okay, I'm going to be there in, August on the 12th. We're going to have a meeting. So I set myself a deadline, because I cannot do anything without a deadline. And
that's good.
and I wrote like the wind. And so I got like 10 chapters finished, although I only gave her 9 because the 9th one ended on a really good hook. And I sold the book that way. The
Nice.
problem was I'm not one of those writers that had 57 unfinished manuscripts or finished manuscripts in my desk drawer. That was literally my first novel that I'd ever attempted. And I got the check. I had
Yep.
a publishing date. I'm all excited.
Yay.
And then I realized I have no idea how to write a novel. And so I'm freaking out. I'm in the bathtub every night, like reading Novel Writing for Dummies,
Yep.
and that kind of thing. And there were 2 books that sort of helped me kind of figure out my way. One was Stephen King's On Writing, and the other was a book called How I Write by Janet Ivanovich. And she talks, and it's not a really popular writing book. She wrote it with someone else. And but one of the things she talked about is when she's planning out her stories, she storyboards them. And because I had come from advertising, that was already how I was used to working. And so that like unlocked things for me.
Cool.
So I would say that. Another book I read just this year, I'm looking up because I couldn't remember the title of it.
Yeah.
Another book that I read this year was called Make Time, which was a book about sort of prioritizing the things in your life that are important to you.
Okay.
And I practiced that all last year. And I found it really helpful because I don't know about you, but during the pandemic, I struggled to get anything done. I felt like I could not accomplish anything. And so I read this book, Make Time, and it was really just so helpful for me in just like if I only want to get one thing done, what am I going to do today? And just helping me to prioritize those things first and then let the other things happen.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, that's sounds like a book I exactly need right now. So
yeah,
I'm gonna have to go get that. And then thanks for that craft book option, because I've never actually that recommendation, because I've never actually heard of that one. And I always like finding new ones. So
It was one of the, I think with craft books that, people get all excited about, like, oh, we got to read Save the Cat, or oh yeah, like Save the Cat is one that everybody is,
Yep.
right, everybody's always talking about. But for some people, Save the Cat doesn't resonate.
Mhm.
And for me, I had read lots of other craft books, but until I read that one, which connected with my previous experience,
Yep.
none of them really resonated the same way. And then
Right.
when she said that, I was like, oh, I know how to do this.
That's awesome though. Perfect. Cool. Well, I love all those book recommendations. It's wonderful. It's always nice to kind of hear what authors like, what books they like, because you can see kind of like how they got to where they are and everything. I love that. And plus, I don't have enough books, so
Does anyone ever have enough books? I mean,
no, never. What originally made you want to be a writer?
oh my gosh, I think I was born that way. I always wanted to be a writer. I
Yeah.
remember like being a kid, we had in my family room, we had this fireplace with glass, like it had like the thing that close, I can't remember what it's called. The thing
Yep.
that closes over it is glass. And it had like a black iron or something outline, steel, I don't know what it was. And the couch was directly across from it. And when I was a little kid, I used to sit on the couch and pretend I was on a talk show talking about my latest book. And I could see my own reflection in the
I love
glass
that.
from the fireplace. I
Oh,
don't know. I mean, I always wrote stories. When I was a little kid, I was probably in third grade, and we had this like super adorable science teacher named Mr. Gemeinhardt.
okay.
And he was like one of those teachers that all the third grade girls are like, ooh, right? Fresh out of college, just charming and sweet as he could be.
Yeah.
And I started writing this, I guess it was a serial at the time, this serial about Mr. Gemeinhardt. And I would read it to the every day on the side.
Oh, that's
And
so
and
funny.
he give only the girls ice cream, or ride onto the playground with a white horse, or who knows, like
Yeah.
whatever makes a third grade girl's heart go pitter pat. But
Yeah.
but I would read these stories every day under the slide, and then that afternoon I would go home and write more,
Oh,
and
cool.
I'd read it again the next day, and that went on for like months. And I was hooked. I was completely hooked. I love
That's
I love
awesome.
the power of it, as far as like, creating this story. I loved
Yeah.
how excited all the other girls got about it. So yeah, that was it.
Ah, that's so awesome. I love that. Like, I think that a lot of writers, from the moment they could hold a pen, we're telling stories somehow. And I just love that
Mhm.
your first audience was like those third grade girls and stuff,
Yeah.
like your own, your friends and
Mhm.
stuff. I just love that. That's such a
Yeah.
cute, you need to write that into a story if you haven't yet. I think that'd be super cute.
Definitely.
Right.
Definitely.
What are some tips that you have for writers wanting to break into the publishing industry with like romance? What would you recommend if they're just starting out?
So, if they're wanting to break into traditional publishing, I think one of the best things that I mean, obviously, you want to write and you want to get better at your writing, and practice your craft, and really work on writing a good query letter,
Mhm.
because that has such a huge impact on whether or not your work is read.
Mm.
And it's one of those things I think that people struggle over, but they don't really think about kind of the sales aspect of it, because if you don't have a great query letter, no one's going to actually read the manuscript.
Mm.
That said, I think that any opportunity that you have to meet face to face with people, in particular with agents, is a really good thing to do. Because if you have, and a lot of times at conferences, they have this like agent speed dating. And so
Oh,
if you're going to RWA or some of the other, even the regional romance conferences, you often have an opportunity to meet with agents who rep romance.
mhm.
And especially if you've done your research, right? If you've done your research and sort of who your target agents are, then you can just do a little light stalking at the conference. They're usually at the bar, And introduce yourself and make that personal connection, because then when and make sure you've got that elevator speech down pat. And people always say, oh, you can't meet anybody at conferences, but that is not true. When my first novel, 15 Minutes of Shame, was being published, I had gone to, again, Book Expo. There's something magical for me about Book Expo. I had gone to Book Expo. I think it was held in LA that year. And I went to a panel about selling your book to film.
Oh,
and
cool.
Right, it was a great panel, and there were a bunch of industry people. And there was one guy in particular, a guy named Brandon Deneen, who I thought was really funny and interesting and smart. And so afterwards, I like tromp myself up, which I will say nobody ever does. Well, I shouldn't say nobody, but not that many people do it. Tromped myself up, let other people go ahead, so I'd be the last one. And I talked to him, and I said, "Oh my gosh, you were so great. I really love this part." Da 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 da. And I said, "Oh, I have a book. It's coming out in whatever it was, 6 months." And told him all about it. And he's like, "Wow, that sounds like a movie." And I said, doesn't it? And so what the crazy thing is, that same conference, I was signing books next to Delia Ephron, who was Nora Ephron's sister and film partner at the time before Nora died. And I met her in the back, like they have like this curtain area where all the authors hang out before it's your turn to sign. And I told Delia Ephron about my book, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, that sounds like a movie." And I was like, "Oh, life is going to change."
Yes, I need to do this now.
It was the greatest. It was like the greatest weekend in my life.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I meet this guy, Brandon Deneen. I tell him how great he is, and I had one copy of my manuscript in my bag because I didn't have ARCs yet. It was really early, but I had one copy. So I whip it out of my bag and I hand it over. And he read it on the plane on the way home. And and then he said, "I really like it, and I'm got some stuff going on right now, but I'm going to call you in a couple of months." And I said, "Okay." And I'm like, "Oh my God, it's happening." And and so it turned out he was leaving his job. He was a VP of development at a pretty major production company at the time, and going out on his own as a books to film rep. And my book became the first book that he repped. And so I was his first client, and it was the first book that he sold. It was the first book he sold as a new person, right?
That's so cool. Yeah. So has that book been made into a movie?
It has not. It's been in development hell for a really long time.
Well, hopefully it gets moving, right?
Right, exactly. So that is at least good.
That's exciting though. What a good connection, all from just going up and talking to someone at the conference. Like I just got back from a publishing conference like last month, and I swear, going up to talk to them, you learn so much more and create so many connections. It's just wonderful.
Absolutely. Right. And it's hard sometimes for writers because a lot of us are shy but you just got to put yourself out there. You figure like for 1 week or one weekend, I can be brave.
Right. Yeah.
It makes all the difference.
Most of us are kind of introverted, so it's kind of a little scary, but I totally agree with you. That's just wonderful. And what a cool story too. I love that. I love your stories, girl. You're a storyteller. It's perfection.
Thank you.
So what are some must-have marketing tools that authors should have in their marketing toolbox if they'd like to upscale their marketing?
Oh, okay. So a couple of things, and most of them are not going to cost you anything. The first thing is you need to start, even if you are not published yet, you need to start with a mailing list.
Okay.
And you're going to use your mailing list for two things. You're going to use your mailing list to create a newsletter list, so people who are your early readers, and eventually a big list of your fans. And you can do that by creating a newsletter magnet. Maybe it's a short story, or maybe you're doing giveaways of other books that are in your same genre, but you're doing something to attract people to your newsletter list. So first thing first, absolutely you need to do that. That's going to be your most reliable, happy marketing for your entire career. You are not dependent on, the moodiness of Instagram or Facebook or anybody at YouTube's algorithm or anything else. So mailing list is one. And the second part of this, and I talk a lot about this in Become a Famous Romance Author, is that you want to start building a mailing list of review contacts and other media contacts. So there's that. And you want to make sure that you're really differentiating them right from the beginning. You don't want to glump them all into one big email list. You want to know, these people are podcasters, these people are local television, these people are this, so that you can reach out to them appropriately. And that you're communicating to them what they want to hear. Next, you need to have a media kit, which is nothing, it's not particularly complicated, but I feel like this is something that this is like one of my pet peeves. There's a lot of advice out there on what to put in your media kit, what not to put in your media kit, and most of it is fairly terrible. And so as a person who has done 3,000 interviews, has both pitched extensively and been pitched from my time when I was on the daytime show, and also I've been a columnist for a number of different publications. For your media list, you need some sort of document that has your bio, not your full bio. I don't care where you went to college unless it's relevant to, where, if you're writing a book about the law and you graduated from Harvard Law School, great. But, if you were doing Model UN, unless your book is about that, it doesn't really matter. So your bio is going to be short. You want things that are interesting about you. You want to make sure that you have a picture, like a reproducible picture of you and your book cover available on your in your press kit. You want to have about 3 different angles. So if you're writing fiction, obviously one is just a review, how to review the book and kind of the blurb about what it's about. But also you can use some sort of nonfiction angles to talk about the book as well. And contact information. And that is really important, because if a publicist or if a reporter or journalist or podcaster is looking for information on how to contact you at 2:00 in the morning and you don't have that information there, they're going to go to the next person who does. So those are the things that you need. You don't need a bunch of other crap in there. So that's, you're hearing it. That's it.
Perfect. No, that's wonderful. That's great advice. I love that. That is just beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Then when it comes to doing a newsletter, because I know you said that those are really important, what are some different tips that you would give for writers to build it, to kind of get, their opt-in offer out in front of people and everything? Because I know that I've been asked that by countless people. So thought I would ask you, since you mentioned that.
Well, so there are a number of things you can do. If you have a good social media following, then you want to put, really, honestly, you want to put your offer out wherever you might have a platform. If you're just starting out, you can use sites like Book Sweeps, which will sort of pair your books with other books in the same genre. And the people who register for the contest, which I think you usually win, like, 50 books and a Kindle or something.
That's nice.
They have the opportunity to select authors that they're interested in hearing more about. And so they'll opt in on your list, and you can net, 500 people on your mailing list, which is pretty fantastic. Another thing that you can do is do newsletter swaps, where you work with other authors who have a newsletter about the same size as yours, and you can promote each other's books or promote each other's offers. So that's always a good thing as well. You want to make sure, though, with a newsletter, you're not just like, you think of it as a friendship. Don't think of it like, you don't want to just contact people when you want money, right? You want to make sure that you're having that continual contact, that you're building a relationship with them the whole time, not just when you want them to fork over some cash for your latest book.
That is such a good pointer, because I know I've been on some lists and it's only whenever. Right. And it's like, wait a minute.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
and if you're and the other thing is sometimes you're like, who is this person? Like, I don't remember, like maybe you signed up for their list 3 years ago and it's been a while since they published anything,
Yeah.
or they've just been neglecting their newsletter list, so they hadn't really thought to send anything out. But yeah, I mean, I certainly have gotten things where I'm like, how am I on this list? I don't even know this person. Like, I
I
don't,
don't even know
but
this
if
person. It's been so long, right?
right.
Yeah.
But if you're reaching out to them once a month or every couple of weeks, then they know, like, not they've signed up. So that's the other thing. People always think, oh, I don't want to be a pain in the neck. And you don't want to send people emails, 7 times a week. You
Right.
just don't, right? But once or twice a month where you're sort of letting them know what's going on, it's good, and if you're publishing semi-regularly, you always have something you can share.
Yeah.
I'm working on this book now. I'm super excited about it. Hey, I'm looking for beta readers on this. Let me know if you want to participate. Hey, I've got this new cover. I'm super excited about it. What do you guys think? So there's always something that you can that you can talk to them about. And I always say your newsletter readers are gold. Like, they get everything first. These are your most loyal people. They get to know the good news first, and then you call your mother. Okay, maybe your mother first, but everybody,
Yes.
but your newsletter people are,
Yeah.
they get it. They get it right after your mom.
Right. Right. That's wonderful. Well, thank you for going into that a little bit more. I think that was good. That'll be really helpful. So thank you.
You're welcome.
What are some things that people will learn about when they read your most recent book titled Become a Famous Romance Author, PR Secrets to Get a Ton of Book Reviews?
Well, they will learn that you don't have to, that you can, oh, did you cut out? Did I cut out again?
You cut
That's
out
all
there,
right.
but you're back again. So
Okay.
sorry, but
I don't know if
I'm
it's
not sure what
me or
happened.
it might be me. Who knows? I'm too wiggly today.
Internet's weird these days, but
especially at this time of day. My goodness. Okay, so what they will learn in Become a Famous Romance Author, there are a number of things. First, you'll learn that the first thing that your publicist will tell you at your publisher is that, like, oh, it's really hard to get publicity for novels, and that's just not true. It's just as easy as it is to get publicity for anything else. Reviews are not your only option for publicity, which is, I think, a really important lesson. And one of the things that I talk about in the book pretty extensively is how to pitch different angles, how to tell the story, how to use the elements in your book, or how to use the elements in your own biography to put together really interesting segments and stories. And I also talk about how to get involved in stories that are already in progress as an expert or a source. I'll tell you who you need to talk to at every media outlet. I'll tell you how far in advance you need to pitch, depending on what kind of outlet it is. So it's kind of funny. PR is something that I sort of fell into backwards. I'd worked in advertising, and when my first book, Stop Getting Dumped, came out, I had a lot of terror around that. Like, what if I publish this book and nobody ever buys it?
Yeah.
Right, middle of the night kind of panic. And so I started pitching, like, to radio stations in the middle of the night, like, in order to get myself back to sleep. Like, okay, if I just send out if I just try and, like, sell some books, then I'll feel better and then I can go to sleep. So I'd send out a couple pitches to radio stations, which turned out to be like a really great time to send out to radio stations, because morning show producers are usually in at like 4 o'clock in the morning. So if you're freaking out at 2 a.m., you're like first in their inbox.
Right.
And so I started getting booked, and then friends of mine started asking me if I would write pitches for them. My one friend, Lisa McLeod, who I've gotten booked on, like, Good Morning America and a million other shows. And then I started taking on clients, and then I was director of publicity for a mid-sized publisher for quite a while, for many years, so as a consultant. So yeah, so I really enjoyed it, and this is sort of like all the goodies that I have learned over that period of time.
Wow. Well, I think a lot of people are going to love it when they end up reading it. I know I'm really loving it so far. So it's super exciting. Since you said you're a hybrid author, I just thought I'd ask, since that means you probably have an agent, right?
I do have an agent. Yes.
Okay. So how did it work with, publishing your newest one,
Which
and
I
working
published
with an agent? Did they, or was it completely separate? I don't know if that is a very understandable question.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. So
Good.
I work with an agent that she's been my agent for a long time, and her name's Stephanie Evans, and I love her to death.
Okay.
She's a fantastic agent. So Stephanie sells my books to publishers. So this book I did not sell to a publisher, and so she was not involved. So if I wanted to sell foreign rights or something, which again, I don't really see that as being, American media is different from media in other, it's pretty similar to like Canadian media and Australian media, but even UK media is a little bit different.
Right.
So yeah, she's not somebody I would involve with a book that I was indie publishing unless I was looking to exploit some other rights with it. So if I'd indie published a romance or a romance series, then I would probably work with like a book to film agent or somebody, under their umbrella at the agency. If I wanted to do that, obviously I wouldn't try and do a deal like that on my own, or I'd call Maggie Marr, actually, is probably what I do.
Yeah.
So so if I'm not selling it to a publisher, then generally she's not involved. And sure, it's okay.
Okay, cool. I was just kind of wondering how that works and everything, because I'm kind of going the indie route, but in the future, I wouldn't mind also being hybrid here. So what has been the most effective marketing strategies that have helped you out the most out? Like, which ones are like your bread and butter that have like really helped you out?
Oh, good gracious. So, several things. Newsletter swaps with other authors have always been really effective. Although here's a really funny story. It was my goal this year, because I really struggled in 2020 to get anything. I didn't get anything done. And my goal for 2021 was to put out a book. Like, no matter what, I'm going to put out a book. And so I set the pre-order date, and I was, it was way late by the time I was finishing it. And normally, again, having worked with traditional publishing for a long time, I would start pitching that book like 6 months prior to launch, at least. Longer now because everything's so much more slowed down.
Oh, sure.
And I am just now starting to do that. So I guess one of the lessons, which I talk about in the book, is that people often think that the only time you can get publicity for the book is right when the book comes out. And that's not true. You can continually get publicity for the book. Stop Getting Dumped. I think I talked about that thing for like 7 years. I mean, I am not exaggerating. I talked about it a lot. I still talk about it sometimes. I do a regular gig on the Two Mics show, which is a big UK, it's like the biggest UK sports show. I'm like their resident dating expert. I have no idea why they love me, but they do.
That's awesome.
So they still are plugging Stop Getting Dumped, which is sort of funny. I know. So it's sort of funny. So newsletters for sure. Newsletter swaps, I think, are really good because you have the opportunity to reach other readers of books that are similar to yours. And generally it's free. You partner with other authors. When they have a book coming out, you send out for them. Plus it gives you extra newsletter content. You could go, oh, my friend so-and-so's got a new book coming out. I'm really excited to read it. If you want to pick it up, it's right here. So then you're not always, again, selling your own stuff. You're saying, hey, this looks really good. So there's that. Publicity.
Sure.
That can really sell a lot of books, especially if you're doing it on an ongoing basis and you're not, sort of just concentrating it around the launch and then forgetting the book. So there's that. And I work with a number of authors who do romance series. And while I have not done that, that is certainly the way. Then they'll just promote the first in the series, and then they sell through to the rest of the series.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, I know, right? That's something I'm going to try this year.
Yeah, do it.
That's my big,
awesome.
That's my big goal. Newsletter, publicity, partnerships. And it really depends. Like, I love Goodreads as far as selling books, but some people are just not into it. And of course, if you can ever get a book bub, whichever, they don't have the power that they used to, but they certainly do sell some books.
So what would you say is the most difficult? I like asking these two questions to everyone that I interview. So what is the most difficult thing about being a writer for you?
Oh my gosh. Um, so for most of my book writing career, I worked at the beach.
Oh,
And I would like drop my kids off at school and go to the beach and write for, until like 4 p.m. and then go pick them up from school. But as they get older, their schedules change. And so now, school starts at 7 o'clock in the morning,
yeah.
and you pick them up at like 2. And so that makes it more challenging. And plus with COVID, like I just don't feel like that's something that I could really do. And so I will say that having my routine interrupted and not really finding another routine that I really gelled with.
Okay.
So like that beach routine I've been doing for years and years and years. And it overlooks the water. I have a great view from my office. I have comfy chairs, and but it's been more challenging. It's been more challenging to do it that way. So that was it. I guess a disruption in my schedule.
Yeah. Oh, I can understand how that would definitely kind of like make it more difficult, because writing is already hard. So disruption just makes it even harder.
Yeah. Well, and I'm one of those people, like if I get interrupted, that it's like 25 minutes for me to reset.
Yeah.
So yeah. So it's just, yeah. So
oh man. Well, I hope that gets better and everything, and you can get back into a good system that works for you and everything. Yeah.
Me too. Well, at least I finished a book this year. So I'm excited about that. It's a short book, but I'm like, okay,
you met your goal. That's really good.
I got over the finish line with that. And I think sometimes it's just like getting back into the habit of that.
Yeah. That's awesome. And so do you have any other books that are going to be coming out soon?
Yeah. So I just got the rights back for 15 Minutes of Shame, which I think I mentioned was my first novel. So Penguin, after me begging for years and years, has just given me my rights back, which I'm very excited about. So I know. So
that's really awesome.
It is. I always hated the cover of that book. And so I get to put a beautiful new cover on it and re-release it. So I'm very excited about that.
Re-releasing it in indie?
In February, I think the 15th. I haven't put the pre-order yet, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be the 15th of February.
Yeah.
Which is like, the day after Valentine's Day. Feels
yay. So, well, that's super exciting. I'm just so excited for you. That's wonderful, Lisa. Like I've heard many people who like have gotten their rights back for books and then they pop them up, and sometimes they do a lot better, which is crazy. But and sometimes it's exciting. Oh my gosh. So I'm super pumped for you.
Thank you. That book was like, I did like a really big book tour I did like a 28 city book tour, and it sold pretty well at the time.
Yep.
But it was also like it was also like kind of a crazy time period. Yep. And there were all these printing issues. Like I would go to events and they didn't have books. It was terrible. Like there's nothing worse than you do media, you've got the bookstore event, you get there and they haven't gotten the books. And it was happening like and this is not common with a traditionally published book. And this was Penguin. So it's not like it was some fly-by-night thing, but it kept happening. We weren't getting books on time. It was awful. And I spoke to this huge event, and it was like the only time in my life where I've been like John Grisham, like where I had a line that was like 2 hours long, people waiting to get their books signed. The problem was that many of the people had received a book, which nobody knew until they started reading it on the way home, that was 15 minutes of shame at the beginning and the Joy Luck Club at the end.
Oh my. So that
Yeah.
was like some really bad print issues then.
Yeah,
That wouldn't be
really.
normal for trad publishing. Oh my
No,
word.
no, it was really bad. And when I call, when I gotten all these email again, right? The email, I'm like passing out my like, oh, email me.
Right. Yep.
They did, and they were like, hey, my book's missing 70 pages. And when I called the publisher, they're like, tell them they can turn it in Barnes and Noble. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, these people waited in line for a signed book, and not like, so I ended up buying cases of books and swapping them out. It was like this big nightmare. So
Oh my gosh.
yeah.
Wow.
So that was so that
crazy.
was it. I've forgotten about that, but yeah. So.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's just wonderful though. I just love your little stories, and that's just so funny. Oh my goodness. Love that. And then I have a couple other questions here. So the other one is kind of has to do with that other one, the difficult thing, but what is the most precious thing that you love about being a writer, and just something you love about it?
Oh my God, there are a million things I love about being a writer.
Right.
Other writers, for instance. I love when a fan writes to you and tells you how your book has impacted them, how it changed their lives, or how much they love your character, or how much they related to something that you wrote. That is like catnip. I love that. Love, love, love it. And I think that's probably the most precious thing to me. And the going into a bookstore and seeing your book on the shelves never gets, or in the better yet, in the window, never gets old.
Oh, that's cool.
Never ever gets old.
That is awesome. Thank you for sharing everything with us. This has just been such a good interview. So I really enjoyed chatting with you too.
Ditto. Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh,
There's
good.
great questions, really great questions.
Oh, good. I'm glad I was able to challenge you, right? Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes some of the questions are like, oh my. Oh, that's so funny. So where can people find you and your books online?
So this is really funny. I actually am working on a major web design right now, but you can find my old site at lisadaily.tv. And my new site, which will be coming soon, is lisadailybooks.com.
Okay. Do you know when that one will be live?
I don't know. That was one of my goals for the year, and it's not happening.
Okay.
So
sure thing.
Yeah, but lisadaily.tv is up and running.
Okay, perfect. I will put both of them in the description just so that once the new one is live, the people will be able to find it on one or the other, whichever one is live at the moment.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for doing this interview with me, Lisa. And it was lovely chatting with you.
Thank you so much for having me, Devin. It was great. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And you have a lovely rest of your night. And it was just wonderful. Just a cherished moment to chat with you. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Ditto for you. All right. Bye, Devin. Yep. Thank you so much for having me.
Bye-bye.